webinar on eye care conversation with the expert. And I feel proud to be such an elite institution, Jansen's Institute of Technology, where teaching always go beyond the classrooms. On behalf of our institution, it is a moment of extreme pleasure to welcome the chief guest, Dr. Shreyas Ramamurthy, consultant, cataract, cornea, and refractive surgery, the Eye Foundation, Coimbatore. Apart from this, he is known for his wonderful administration and high achievements of the institution he is in charge of, and he renders selfless services to the society. Thank you so much, sir, for accepting our invitation and coming over for the webinar. I wish this session enlightens us all and provide us with approaches to deal with eye problems during this pandemic. I render my heartfelt welcome to our management, principal, HODs, and faculty members of JIT for this webinar. It's my pleasure to extend a cheerful welcome to Mr. Ravi Kumar, Manager, Public Relations Department, and his team members from the Eye Foundation, Coimbatore. My desire is to extend a gracious and inclusive welcome to all participants from all age groups and from across the country for this session. And before going to the session, there are a few instructions for the delegates in the Google Meet window. I request all of you to put your audio in mute till the presentation gets over by the chief guest, and you can raise your question after the presentation session by unmuting yourself. If more than one member is asking question means, please allow one at a time to ask the question clearly. And for the participants in the YouTube, you can post your questions in the chat box. Please avoid repetitive questions. Now, I request Dr. V.P. Radha, Associate Professor, to introduce our chief guest.
A warm good morning to all. If your eyes are opened, you'll see the things worth seeing. The eye is the jewel of the body. Eyes play an integral part in our lives. Eyes are the most important organs of the body, and we all want to keep it healthy. Taking care of eyes will benefit the overall health. Today, we have with us Dr. Shreyas Ramamurthy sir to have eye care conversation with all of us. It's my great honor and pleasure to introduce the chief guest of the day, Dr. Shreyas Ramamurthy, Consultant, Cornea, Cataract and Refractive Services, the Eye Foundation, Coimbatore. The Eye Foundation has proved to be the best eye specialty hospital in the major cities of South India, treating millions of patients. Always at the cutting edge of technology, they are among us the first to introduce laser eye surgery, both in laser refractive surgery as well as laser cataract surgery. We have with us an eminent ophthalmologist from Eye Foundation today. Dr. Shreyas Ramamurthy sir completed his MBBS in Coimbatore Medical College and MS in Ophthalmology in Aravind Eye Hospital and Postgraduate Institute in Ophthalmology, Madurai. And to his credit, sir was awarded gold medals in both MBBS and MS. Sir holds Fellow of International Council of Ophthalmology and Fellowship in Corneal and Anterior Segment. His areas of expertise includes corneal diseases, lamellar cornea surgery, laser cataract surgery, and advanced refractive surgery. He is also a member of All India Ophthalmic Society, Tamil Nadu Ophthalmic Association, American Society of Cataract and Refractive Surgery. A very warm welcome to you, sir. It's a great pleasure to have such an enthusiastic surgeon with us today for this eye care conversation. I'm gratified to invite Dr. Shreyas Ramamurthy sir to imbibe awareness about eye care and open up the conversation. It's over to you, sir.
Thank you so much, madam. And I'll also thank Dr. Suresh Kumar before that for the lovely welcome address. And it's really a pleasure. I would like to thank all the faculty and the heads of Jansen Institute of Technology for having me over once again. And it's really a pleasure to meet you all again. And I really hope that this is the last time we meet through a webinar. And the next time, if at all, whenever we meet, it should be in person, maybe in your auditorium. And hopefully we will not have another wave of COVID to have such webinars again. At this point of time, I think the last time, if you all remember, we discussed more about minimal awareness around COVID. And we also spoke about some of the things which you alluded to, like laser surgery, laser treatments, and the advanced procedures available at Eye Foundation and which are necessary for eye care. Today, I'm going to step away from all of that, not really talk about the latest technology that we have, but talk about a very pressing situation which is causing a lot of distress in a number of lives because of our current scenario. And it is and this is related to the what has been popularly become known as the black fungus. So I will take you all over. Just one second. I'll just try to. So I'll try to take you all through this presentation and talk mainly about how black fungus is causing a problem and what are the measures that we can take, what it is that we need to look out for, and what are the things that we need to remember and educate people about. And then finally, I'll also talk about how healthcare and particularly eye care has been affected because of COVID, and what are the important things that we need to keep in mind during this COVID era and that we should not neglect because healthcare is still an arm's length away when it comes to routine screening. So I'll first, without further ado, I'll start off with black fungus. And black fungus, for the rest of the topic, I will not call it black fungus, and I will call it by its actual name, which is mucormycosis. The first thing, and that's why I've highlighted in bold letters, is not to panic. Mucormycosis is not something new. It is not something which is suddenly causing a problem. It is not something which is suddenly taking away lives. It is a ubiquitous organism. It is actually a commensal. Commensal meaning it is normally present all around us in the soil. It is present in the air. It is present in our body. It is present in our throat. It is essentially an opportunistic infection. It does not, in a normal person, it does not cause any problem whatsoever. And most importantly, it is not infective in the sense somebody has mucormycosis and they cannot spread it from person to person. By touching a patient or helping a patient or treating a patient with mucormycosis, we will not get mucormycosis. Only when a person's immunity has been broken down, then this mucormycosis takes a dangerous turn and causes disease. This is not unlike tuberculosis itself. TB, which we all know, and as we've been living with TB all around us for the past century, and we are not very scared or afraid of TB. Because normally, if you are a normal, healthy individual, TB itself is not a cause of concern at all. But only in patients where the immunity is compromised, TB is a cause of concern. And mucormycosis is something very similar to that. So a little bit about details of mucormycosis. One is we call it rhino-orbital cerebral mucormycosis because it essentially involves the nose and sinus cavities, the structure around the eye, which we call the orbit, and the brain, which is cerebral. So what are the main risk factors for mucormycosis? One is diabetes mellitus, and especially if it is uncontrolled diabetes mellitus. Also, something which increases or deranges our blood sugar is the treatment with steroids. Whether we are taking steroids for certain any conditions, these steroid medications can increase our blood sugar and cause a previously well-controlled diabetic to become uncontrolled. Other immunosuppressive drugs which we may be taking for certain diseases, or we are undergoing chemotherapy before any cancer treatment, or we have some malignancy, these are all the traditional risk factors for mucormycosis. So why is it that suddenly we are talking about mucormycosis so much in COVID? Every day you cannot open the newspaper without an article about the black fungus. So the reason is not entirely completely well established why there is a sudden surge, but we have some very good reasons why this could be happening. One is, of course, the indiscriminate use of steroids and a life-saving drug called tocilizumab. Now, both steroids and tocilizumab are very necessary for treatment of severe COVID disease. But when given in doses which are very high, this can actually suppress our natural immunity. And also, if a person is previously diabetic, it can worsen their diabetic status. or even a person who's not diabetic can turn diabetic by the excessive use of steroids. The COVID virus also affects the cells in our body which produces insulin, and there can be destruction of those what we call islets of Langerhans, and this reduction in insulin can also worsen the diabetes. Our natural innate immunity is also lowered by these important CD4, CD8 cells are also reduced. One factor is oxygen therapy, but not the oxygen itself, but there are several oxygen cannulas, and as you all know, and being from this Western Tamil Nadu, which currently is India's hotspot, where we have the highest incidence and highest density of COVID cases at this point of time, the healthcare services across all hospitals, all multi-specialty hospitals, single specialty hospitals is stretched who are treating COVID. And with these limited resources, they are having to treat a huge number of COVID patients, many of whom require oxygen. So it is not unexpected that they are having to reuse some of these cannulas, reuse some of these tubings, and the water itself, which is used in the humidifier attached to these oxygen devices, oxygen generators. If all of these on reuse or not using sterile water can harbor fungal infections, and the most dangerous among which is mucormycosis. So these are the main risk factors for mucormycosis and the reason why it is increased in COVID. So what is it that we need to look out for? Now, the most often how mucormycosis, a fungus enters our body is through the nasal cavity. So essentially, you get nasal stuffiness, blocked nose, foul smell discharge, and you can also get a bleeding from the nose, and the normal discharge that you may get from the nose can become a little more smelly, may have some blood tinge in it. And then the mucosa, which we call, that is the tissue present inside our nose, will be very inflamed, and it can, and essentially what mucor does everywhere, it is angio-invasive. It invades the blood vessels and blocks the blood vessels, and this causes what we call ischemia, and then can lead to a black necrosis, and that's why it is called black fungus. When it spreads from the nose into the sinus cavity and then into the surrounding structure, which is the eye, the orbit, where the eyelids can become edematous, they're swollen, and you can have the similar discoloration in the later stages, which can become a blackish discoloration. You can have severe facial pain and headache along one side. You can have ptosis, which is a drooping of the eyelid. The eyelid almost covers the eye. And then the eyeball itself is bulging forward, which is proptosis. And in the late stage, you can also have loss of vision. So loss of vision happens in a very late stage. It is actually the eyelid edema, the discoloration, drooping of the eyelid, and bulging of the eyeballs, which happens in the earlier stages of disease. So these are a little more severe, this thing where I'm showing the severe lid edema, that is swelling of the lids, and you can see this discoloration over the eyelid. And in a more advanced stage where the eyelid is almost, eyeball is looking frozen, it is bulging forward, what we call proptosis, and it is not, you're not able to move the eye. In a more advanced, where this is when it becomes impossible to save the life of the patient, is when it spreads to the brain, where after spreading to the brain, called the cavernous sinus, it can spread to the other eye, called bilateral proptosis. Then you start having nerve palsies, paralysis along any particular side. Our consciousness gets altered. We may start having seizures. This is, of course, a very late stage. So it's only in the early stages where we really need to diagnose and treat. So diagnosis is essentially a clinical diagnosis. Along with that, we may need MRI with contrast for support. From the nasal cavity, we can take the discharge or a small mucosal biopsy, which can be cultured, which is definitive in its diagnosis. And sometimes from the eye also, we can take from the surrounding tissue, we can take a small orbital biopsy. Treatment is multidisciplinary approach. So essentially, an ENT surgeon, an ophthalmic surgeon, a neurosurgeon, radiologist are all involved in the treatment. The mainstay and the most aggressive treatment required is through liposomal amphotericin B, which is the drug of choice for treating this. As you would imagine, with the sudden surge of black fungus, there is a huge shortage of this drug, but it is being made available as rapidly as possible. Production has been ramped up. There is certain components of this very sophisticated drug which needs to be imported, which is being done now. And right now it's tightly regulated, and the government is trying to ensure that it is made available in all the critical areas which are treating this disease. Surgically, it's really the debridement. So whichever is the affected tissue, we are trying to remove certain affected tissues to reduce the load of the fungal infection, and so that this amphotericin B can act on the body, and which can be life-saving. So what can we do to prevent this condition? One is optimal use of steroids. So whenever you get COVID at home, everybody realizes, even when they are in home quarantine, when they are just having mild fever, which is what actually a vast majority of COVID patients have. It's just like a normal flu for a majority of the patients. But a lot of people end up taking steroids thinking that it is a treatment for COVID, and that it has to be suppressed early. And they end up self-administering and using excessive steroids, which causes our immunity to be lowered. If we are diabetic, we really need to ensure we are very well controlled, even whether we have COVID or not. That's very important. Sterile aseptic precautions. A lot of people have started administering oxygen at home, are using these respirators which are now available, which can be bought and used at home. And there we need to use sterile aseptic precautions. The tubings have to be boiled and cleaned regularly. The water in the humidifier has to be changed regularly, and we must use as clean water as possible. After getting COVID, feel now that's over. I've recovered from COVID and I cannot get COVID again. To a large extent, they are right. At least for a certain degree of time, they will not get COVID again because the antibodies will be present in their body. But this is a time when your immunity has been lowered. And before you get any of these opportunistic infections, you must continue wearing masks and practice safe hygiene practices even after you have COVID. Betadine mouth gargle is another thing which prevents any infection from building in our throat, which can be a common passage for entry of many of these organisms. And then building awareness and having a high index of suspicion for this disease and treating it early is of extreme importance. And that is really what we need to do. But build awareness that this is an opportunistic infection. This is not an infection which is going to spread from person to person. It is not something to be alarmed about. We have to remain calm. There is really, it's not something which will affect each and every one of us. Only people with some of the risk factors which we mentioned are going to get the disease. And therefore, it's very important that we are aware of these things. Before closing, I'll just take you all through 2 or 3 important eye conditions which are getting ignored during these COVID times. The main reason is, obviously, people are afraid to move out in the public, afraid to come to hospitals. But one thing what we must keep in mind is that probably a hospital is safer than, let us say, even going to our neighborhood grocery store, because one, all the hospital staff are double vaccinated. So the chance of them spreading COVID is less. The other thing, all these social distancing, all precautions are maintained. And therefore, it is actually quite safe to go to a hospital if and when treatment is required. So whenever we have some condition, rather than to leave it ignored and stay at home, it is better to go and get treatment done early, because in most conditions, not just pertaining to the eye, but anywhere in the body, anything which is starts off is easy to treat at an early stage or prevent it from becoming worse is something which is always the best thing. And the old adage really stands true that prevention is better than cure. And these are some conditions. One is glaucoma, where basically it's a pressure in the eye which can get unregulated. Just like your BP, if you don't take adequate care of your BP and the BP increases, it's not overnight you'll not have a problem, but in the long duration, it causes a lot of issues. So again, in glaucoma, this is how our normal vision is. In the early stage, only the peripheral vision starts getting blurred because of increase in pressure, and we don't have any symptoms whatsoever. And so it can easily be missed. And only when it progresses into a more advanced stage, where the patient then realizes that they are losing vision and the peripheral vision and only central vision is retained, it is only at this stage that many people come and present. So it's extremely important that they are diagnosed early and treated, because it's only done in glaucoma. It is an irreversible disease. Only preventing progression of the condition can be done. So regular screening for anyone who is above the age of 50, family history of patients with glaucoma should again come. People who have hypertension or are smokers should get regular screening done for glaucoma once in every year. A very simple test called Fields examination is done to diagnose glaucoma, and it can be treated with either lifelong drops or surgery, which can prevent progression of this disease and prevent irreversible blindness. Cataract is another very important condition. All of us know about this condition, and many of us will have parents or elders in our house who might have already undergone cataract surgery. Now, the important thing with cataract surgery, it's not a dangerous condition. It's a very simple condition which can be treated. But the important thing is, it should not be, we should not wait for it to become very mature or very ripe. In the immature stage, when we do the cataract surgery, it's a very simple surgery. We can do without any injections, with just topical anesthesia, no sutures are required, quick recovery. We can do through either phacoemulsification or a more advanced thing called laser cataract surgery. And all of these will give immediate recovery, and the very next day patient can get back to routine activities. But if we allow the cataract to become this stage as a very mature cataract, very hard cataract, then the surgery itself is more challenging, can lead to more complications, and the post-op recovery can be quite eventful, and the patient may not have as smooth recovery as in the early stages. So not waiting for the cataract to become very mature is again a very important thing. The last condition which I want to refer to is diabetic retinopathy. Now, this is a condition where diabetes, like it affects many organs, the most common organs which are affected by diabetes are the eye and the kidney, because these have the small capillary vessels which are affected by diabetes. And in the early stages, when we diagnose diabetes at an early stage, we can treat it and prevent blindness. But when it becomes a more advanced stage where you see a lot of bleeding has happened from leakage from the vessels, it's very difficult to treat, and it can actually lead on to blindness. So these are some of the advanced scans which are available to detect early onset fluid accumulation. Even before it becomes visible to the eye, the scan can detect, and regular screening is necessary. These are simple angiography tests which are available, just like how blocks in the heart can be detected through angiography. The blocks in the blood vessels in the eye and leakage, areas of leakage can also be detected, and early treatment with injection or laser can prevent further progression of the disease. So in the early stage, just control of blood sugar is enough. It prevents from progression of the disease and prevents progression of diabetic retinopathy. Then we have some fluid accumulation like macular edema, like I showed in one of the scans there. We can treat it with injections. If there is some leakage, we can do lasers. In very advanced stage, we have to go to retina surgery, which is more complicated and requires a lot of attention. But even with retina surgery, we can try and restore vision. But we want to avoid going to such a late stage and treat it in the early stages itself, so that we are not left with a very difficult situation to handle. Thank you so much for your kind attention. I'll stop sharing now and be happy to take any questions that you have.
Thank you, sir. It is very clear and crisp presentation about the black fungus, because most of the doubts you have cleared in your presentation itself. And now I request the faculty members present in the meet window.
Sir, I'm not sure if it's just for me, but your voice is a little low. I'm not able to hear you very well, especially.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. Now is it audible, sir, for you?
Yeah, it's a little better, sir. Please tell.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So now I open the session for discussion. The faculty members can post the questions one by one.
Good morning, sir.
Morning, madam.
I'm Meena Sundari, sir. Sir, I have a doubt regarding the vaccine. Since it is some people they are telling it's good, and some people they are telling we should not put vaccine. Even educated people, they feel that putting vaccine may lead to some kind of discomfort, or it could not prevent COVID, all those things. Are they ignorant or are they correct? This is my question.
Madam, at the outset, let me thank you so much for bringing this important question. Because it was not pertaining to eye itself, I didn't really talk about vaccines. But let me take the next couple of minutes to address the COVID vaccination itself and allay all fears that everyone may have, genuine concerns, but let me try and allay all of them. One, to answer in a very simple single word, should all of us get vaccinated? Yes, absolutely yes. There is no two thoughts about it. The vaccines, however, publicity, positive publicity, negative publicity is happening about it. All vaccines are there to reduce the severity of the disease. Now, this vaccine which we are using for COVID is not unlike so many other vaccines which we don't hesitate to give to our own children, where they are proven to be, over years they've been used. We don't even ask a second question whether it is all right to use the vaccine for our children. We use them without any hesitation. Similarly, we have to use vaccine. It is important in preventing severe COVID. If you look at the statistics of current vaccination, people who have been vaccinated, the incidence of severe disease, severe hospitalization, ventilator death have been vaccinated. That is, when I say vaccinated, having completed 2 doses and 2 weeks after the second dose. That is when our peak immunity comes. It is extremely rare that they get any of these serious conditions. So exceedingly rare compared to the general population. And as you know now, unlike in the first wave, which was predominantly the mortality was in 60s and 70s, in this wave, the mortality is even more in 30s and 40s than in 60s and 70s. Essentially because the 30s and 40s is the active crowd. They are moving out and they are working continuously, but at the same time are not vaccinated, and that is why many of them are having severe disease. So it's extremely important. Even 1 dose gives some amount of immunity. It is better than having nothing, but completing the second dose is extremely important. Side effects of vaccine are very minimal. I mean, having routine fever, body ache, and all those things are common after any vaccination. Even when we take our children for vaccination, the pediatrician will tell you that the child will have fever for a day or two. Please give them some Calpol or Crocin and the child will be all right. And that is normal. That is perfectly common. It's nothing to be worried about. Thromboembolic phenomena, that is clots happening after vaccination, is exceedingly rare, very, very rare. And it far outweighs the benefits that we can get from this vaccination. So extremely important that all of us get vaccinated as early as possible.
Thank you, sir.
Sir,
Thanks a lot.
very good Sir, very good morning, sir. I am Murali, sir.
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much for your valuable presentation during this pandemic period, sir. So I have a doubt, sir. Will the black fungus affect if you took too much of steam, sir? Even a day I can take 3 to 4 times in a day, sir. It's affect me, sir.
Not really, sir. I mean, steam inhalation 3 to 4 times a day for a normal person is not required, sir. So unless you have some sinusitis or something like that, routine steam inhalation is not necessary. But does steam inhalation itself predispose to mucormycosis? No, sir, not really. So like I said, a normal person without having uncontrolled diabetes or not having undergone a severe COVID illness, the chance of getting mucormycosis is extremely rare, sir. So like I said, mucor is there all over us, all around us. And, it's not that we've been hearing about it earlier. It's only because so many people post-COVID, their immunity is reduced so severely that they are getting this mucor infection.
Thank you very much, sir.
Good morning, sir. I am Dr. Sanjeev, sir.
Morning, sir. Please, sir.
Sir, in addition to the Meena ma'am's question, actually, in some area, unfortunately, for the first dose, they have given a Covishield. The second dose, they have provided the Covaxin. But my question is, if suppose they are putting two doses of Covishield, and after certain time period, they are advertising, no, sir, the Sputnik is more advantageous than as compared with the other kind of vaccinations. So it is suitable for the second wave, like they are telling. After putting the Covishield, if they are interested, they can put Sputnik. Or what is the advisable information about that?
As of now, my general advice would be, sir, that get hold of, for the first dose, take any vaccine which is available in your place, whether it is Covaxin or Covishield, both are equally effective. For the second dose, wherever possible, you can try and take the same vaccine, essentially because the studies which have been done are done with the same vaccine. There is one study which has been done comparing AstraZeneca, that is Covishield first dose, and second dose, which is Moderna vaccine, which is not available in India currently. But they have shown that having two different vaccine also gives equal amount of protection as two doses of the same vaccine. But this we don't know because with regards to Covaxin and Covishield, because these two have not been studied in such a manner. But I would not try to say that just because it has not been studied, that taking one Covishield and second Covaxin is not going to give you immunity. Is there any major side effect? No, not at all. Even by mistake, if you got one Covishield and the next time you get one Covaxin, it is not going to cause a major problem. So there is no fear, but at the same time, wherever possible, we can take the same vaccine as the second dose also. After the second dose, for whether a booster dose of some other vaccine is necessary, we don't know yet. There is no clear-cut answer as of now. That we'll have to wait and see. That will all depend on the mutations and other things which the virus itself undergoes. But suffice to say, if we do vaccinate 70 to 80% of our population, or if 70 to 80% of our population get COVID, then the chance of getting another severe wave will be greatly decreased. And yes, we may have small spurts of infection, like we get the normal flu. Every season, every year, we get some flu virus and people are infected by influenza. But it doesn't cause any alarm and doesn't cause any serious disease. And COVID may become like that once we are vaccinated.
Sir?
Thank you, sir. Thanks a lot, sir.
Sir, good morning, sir. I'm Krishna Kumar.
Please tell me.
Sir, my question is somewhat general, sir. What is the overall care for the human body, sir? What is the overall care we have to take for the human body during this COVID time? Because effect happens all the parts of human body, but it was outed with the help of eye, with the help of nose, with the help of major sensory organs. So I need advice from your side that what is the overall care we have to take, especially during these times.
Thanks. So, I think it's a very general advice, not what you wouldn't have heard earlier, sir. But it's not that we have to do anything special during COVID times other than wearing masks and maintaining social distancing. The only other thing which we can do, and frankly, which is the only thing which is in our hands, is ensuring that we are in a good state of health. So that is exercising regularly. Obesity is a major risk factor for severe COVID, where patients don't respond very well to the disease is when there is obesity is a major risk factor. So if we are a little overweight, exercising and trying to reduce weight is important. Eating healthy. Nothing special needs to be done. We don't have to alter our regular diet in any major way, but eating healthy and at the same time maintaining your weight and maintaining your health is something which is necessary. Other than that, nothing really extra has to be done just for COVID, sir. We don't have to fear it otherwise if we are otherwise normal and healthy.
Thank you, sir.
Hello, sir. Myself, Vijay Priya.
Yes, madam.
I have done LASIK a few years before, sir, in Eye Foundation, and I have a query related to that. Will mucormycosis affect the LASIK person as a normal people, or will cause any other side effects like altering or changing my eye power?
Nothing, madam. Mucormycosis has nothing to do with LASIK, and a person who has undergone LASIK has no higher risk to mucormycosis or getting affected by mucormycosis. It's completely unrelated.
Thank you, sir.
Welcome.
Good morning, sir. This is Meenakshi.
Yes, madam.
Sir, one small advice from your side, sir. Sir, now the normal has completely changed. We are totally in online from morning 9 to evening night 9 or late night. So in that case, how can we protect our eyes? What's your advice to protect our eyes, sir? To take care of your eyes?
Yes, madam. Yes. Madam. So I think that's what I took in our last session, where we spoke about increased screen time. Many of us are working from home, classes are from home, and even more than usual, we are using the screen. And at the end of the day, you can't blame people because we are not allowed to go out. There is no other entertainment. So even in our free time, we end up using a cell phone or TV more often than what we were using in our regular times. So fortunately, it does not cause any major problem, but it just causes some trivial issues. So the trivial issues, a few of them are, one is because we are looking at a screen for a long time, our eyes are open for a longer time, and the blink rate reduces when we are concentrating on a particular screen. So as a result of which the tear keeps evaporating, and we can get what we call evap. So when that happens, using few lubricant eye drops will be helpful. It will reduce any symptoms of irritation or stinging or burning sensation or redness that we may have in our eye. And just lubricant drops will be helpful. If in case it's not getting all right with basic lubricant drops, then getting a consultation with an ophthalmologist will be useful. Restricting screen time outside of normal working, what is essential for working, is useful, will definitely help. But it is not that by using the screen a little extra, something major or something fear, which we need to fear is going to happen. Really worry too much beyond that.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Welcome.
So let me take some questions from the chat box.
Yes, sir.
The YouTube and WhatsApp, sir. So what precautions should people take if they have COVID and high sugar regarding the eyes?
Yes, sir. So this is a very dangerous combination of having COVID and high blood sugar. Obviously, the COVID will be treated by the treating physicians, and that's fine. And whatever needs to be done for COVID, they will do. But the thing is, it's the post-COVID follow-up which people are not able to do, because already the hospitals are burdened with COVID patients. And once the patient is discharged, the hospital is not going to be thinking about the patient anymore. So what does the patient have to do? They should really put every effort possible to control their blood sugar, control either using tablets, insulin, talk to the physicians, take video consultations, because it's really not necessary to go for a physical meeting. For that matter, even for the eyes, it is not necessary that you have to come for every small problem to the hospital. You can take a video consultation. Even in our own website, video consultation platform is available. You can fix an appointment at your convenient time or message our helpline number, and we'll do a video consultation for you. Only we are not able to solve the problem through video consultation, do you have to come to the hospital mandatorily. Pertaining especially to diabetes, like I said, they can have worsening or exacerbation of a pre-existing diabetic retinopathy. Now, they may not have even realized that they have diabetic retinopathy, and that can get worse post-COVID and because of worsening of their diabetic condition. So extremely important that we diagnose it early and treat it early. 10 days to 2 weeks after your initial COVID infection, you are quite safe, and you can do all your normal activities without any concern whatsoever.
Thank you, sir. And can the use of damp masks also be a reason for mucormycosis?
Can mucor be in the mask which is damp? Maybe, sir. I mean, it's not that we have studied it extensively. Can mucor be present in any damp fluid which is stored in some area? Yes, possible. But just because Mucor is there, will it infect you? No, sir. Definitely not. Mucor is probably already there inside us. Just like many other organisms, it is there all around us, it is there inside us. Only when our immunity is reduced does it affect us. So, like I said, if you are uncontrolled diabetic and post-COVID, and you need to control your blood sugar, yes, at that time, maintain safe hygiene practices, continue to wear masks, clean your mask, or use disposable masks. Even a simple 3-ply mask is enough, because we don't necessarily require N95 mask to prevent mucormycosis. A simple 3-ply surgical mask also is enough. Or even a cloth mask which you're washing and cleaning and using on a regular basis, that is also fine.
Thank you, sir.
Welcome.
So, which specialist should I visit for the treatment of black fungus?
So, like I said, it is a multidisciplinary approach. So, when the nasal and sinus cavities are affected, you need to go to a ENT. Ophthalmologist is also involved because Orbit gets involved. Radiologist in making the diagnosis when MRI contrast is done. So, to answer it simply, either ENT or ophthalmologist first. More commonly ENT followed by ophthalmologist, because like I said, it's the nasal symptoms which start first. So ENT followed by ophthalmologist, and then after seeing you, they'll advise an MRI with contrast, and then a radiologist will come into play to help and diagnose the condition. Neurologist is also there, but that's only in the very late stage where the treatment outcomes, prognosis is quite poor.
Thank you, sir. The next question, can red eye be a symptom of mucormycosis during COVID?
So it's not just plain simple congestion redness is not a major thing, but some swelling of the eye and chemosis, those things can be indicator, along with a stuffed nose. And I mean, these can be risk factors or early symptoms of mucormycosis. So yes, if you have had COVID recently and you have any of these symptoms, there is no harm in just going in and getting a checkup done and ensuring that you don't have it. It is usually in the post-COVID period. While you're actively having COVID, the chance or the risk is less because you're already isolated. It is only after COVID that you start going out, you start moving out, and only after COVID that is your immunity is also down. So at that time is when you have any of these symptoms that you can go in for a checkup. During COVID, no need to rush out, no need to this thing. Just stay safe at home, and only if saturation or anything drops, that you need to visit a hospital quickly.
Thank you, sir. And another question, I suffer from chronic eye disease and I've got COVID now. Shall I continue with my eye drops?
When they say eye disease, do they mean dry eye or do they mean something like glaucoma? Whatever be the conditions, there is no harm that using the eye drops during COVID. Please continue whatever eye drops you are using as prescribed by the physician, by the ophthalmologist. It does not counteract or cause any harm to COVID itself.
Thank you, sir. And one question from many of the participants is like, how do we ensure that we have already got COVID? Because most of the COVID patients go unnoticed, unchecked. But now, how do we ensure that? Do we have any tests that already we have got infected with COVID?
So, I mean, if it is asymptomatic disease, we are just fortunate that we've got COVID and gone, and we'll probably have some antibodies. But one thing is to be said that the disease itself producing an antibody response is a little variable. So it's actually the vaccination which produces a better antibody response. So, I mean, whether you know or don't know, it doesn't really matter, sir. Yes, we can there are specific antibody tests which are available, IgG, IgM antibodies which are available, which we can test and which will tell us whether we have got COVID or not. But it's not very important. If you don't know that you've got COVID, likelihood is there that you didn't get COVID. Or even if you got some asymptomatic COVID, it doesn't matter. Please go ahead and get the vaccination done at the earliest opportunity.
Thank you, sir. And another question pertaining to color blindness. Is there any treatment available for color blindness?
Not at the moment, sir. I mean, we have simple things like filter glasses, which help in enhancing color. So most of the time, color blindness is only a relative thing, in the sense that it is not total absence of seeing colors. They see colors, but in a slightly different form, or they see colors in a slightly deficient form. And by using certain glasses with filters, it helps them to enhance those colors and can help them, sir. So we can diagnose what type of color blindness they have, and based on that, certain filter glasses can be given. But apart from that, there is no permanent cure for color blindness at this point of time.
Thank you, sir. And one more question from the participant. I am affected with central vision. Is there any treatment for this, sir?
The central vision is affected. There are a lot of causes for why central vision can be affected, sir. So we really need to examine the cause for it. Many of them will be treatable. Occasionally, one or two, like a scar in the retina, in the central retina or something, may not be treatable. But majority of them can be treated. So if we find out what is the cause for the drop in central vision, we can rectify it, sir.
Thank you, sir. Does wearing double mask is advisable, or single mask is enough?
I don't know if I heard you correctly, sir. I think you're asking if wearing two masks is helpful.
Yes, sir. Two masks at the same time, will it do any difference to the infection rate?
The thing is, there are some studies showing that wearing an extra layer of mask is helpful. Very difficult to give an extremely, a scientific answer which is backed by sufficient literature. But definitely it adds a layer of protection. What many of us do is, if we are, let's say, using a reusable mask, on top of that, we wear a 3-ply mask. So wearing a double mask is useful, sir. More important than the number of masks is how snug the mask is. It should be well fit. There should not be any gaps. And that is when the mask is 100% useful. But definitely, even a loose mask is better than no mask. But it's the snug fit of the mask which is more important.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, sir. And one question is keep on coming on is like, which is better, home quarantine or hospital quarantine when we have minimal symptoms of COVID?
So I just make it very simple for everyone, sir. So for a vast majority of patients, the symptoms are going to be minimal. For 80 to 90%, it is going to be like a normal flu. So what we have to do when we get COVID is that, let us say, if we are just having fever, no breathlessness, nothing, some body ache, fever, malaise, headache, these are the common symptoms. Some people may have some GI symptoms, some loose motion, other things. Yes, it is possible. With these symptoms, what we have to do is just take rest, take paracetamol for fever, and try to get hold of a pulse oximeter. And this pulse oximeter will look at our oxygen saturation. If our saturation is 95 and above, then nothing really needs to be done. On day 4, day 5, if the fever is still persisting, then maybe we can go in for a scan, a CT chest, and some blood tests which need to be done to look at the inflammatory markers. At this stage, if any of those CT chest shows signs of more lung involvement, or if the inflammatory markers are raised, then we need hospitalization. But until then, hospitalization is not mandatory, and home quarantine will be sufficient for a vast majority of patients.
Thank you, sir. One more question from the participant is like, is it advisable to take over-the-counter medicines? And seeing a lot of YouTube videos, the people are suggesting drugs like beta blockers or Clevert to prevent COVID. Is it correct, sir?
My sincere suggestion is to not take any medication to prevent COVID. None of them have been found to be effective. Even ivermectin, so many things, azithromycin, so many things which ourselves, our own medical professionals, we ourselves took during the first wave, and we found them to be totally useless. So there is very little that which is backed by evidence for the prevention. Even things like ivermectin, which did have some prominence earlier, other studies have shown that it is probably not very effective. But so there's not really much that is there to prevent COVID. So no unnecessary medication, and no side effects of medication can also be there. So it's better to avoid self-medicating ourselves, and just practice safe hygiene and wearing masks. That is more than sufficient for preventing COVID.
Thank you so much, sir. Still the questions keep coming. We will send all the questions to the HR department, and if possible, we can send the mail to them, sir, because the questions keep pouring.
Certainly, sir. I'll be happy to answer them, and
Yes.
Probably I can send back typed answers to you
Yes.
through the email. And if in case they want to discuss it further, I'm always available, and you all could directly reach out to me, and I can help and answer all those queries.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much again, because we know that this phrase fits well for you. Amidst your busy schedule, we used to tell to various guests, but this phrase suits you really well. Amidst your very busy schedule, you took up your time and enlightened our faculty members as well as the student fraternity. Now I request Dr. P. Meena Sundari to propose the vote of thanks.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. So on behalf of Jansen's Institute of Technology and on my own behalf, I extend a very hearty vote of thanks to our chief guest, Dr. Shreyas Ramamurthy, sir, for gracing the occasion in your busy schedule and sharing with us your findings and opinions today. A big thank you to Dr. Shreyas for his efforts towards clearing all the doubts of the participants. Opportunity to thank our management, principal, and heads of various departments for motivating us to organize this webinar. Special thanks goes to the faculty members and students of JIT for their active participation. I also extend my thanks to Mr. Ravi Kumar, Manager, Public Relations Department, and his team members from the I Foundation, Coimbatore, for their enormous cooperation in organizing this event. An event like this cannot happen overnight. The wheel started rolling a week ago. We have been fortunate enough to be backed by a team of very motivated and dedicated colleagues led by Professor Krishna Kumar and Dr. Mahendran, who worked behind the scene to execute this event. It has been our tribute to host all the members and audience of the meeting. I'm thankful to all the participants for coming here and attending the association meeting. Thank you all. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you so much, madam, for the kind words, and I thank all the management, senior staff, and students of Jansen Institute for having me over. And it's been a pleasure once again interacting with all of you. And I, like I said at the beginning of the meeting, I do sincerely hope that our next interaction is in person and not through another webinar in another way. So I hope that we can all get ourselves vaccinated as early as possible and encourage all around us to get vaccinated so that we can prevent a third wave of COVID. Thank you so much for having me over.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.